And that is why Madam Web is of course the best movie of 2024. That is why Kraven the Hunter is my favourite movie. Of course, Venom in Peru had to be my favourite movie. Directed by David Lynch, released in 1984, the 49-hour cut in 2024 is my favourite movie. And my Kraven Godzilla Kisses Kong's ass is my favourite movie of 2024. Okay, stop. That is enough with this multiverse crap, okay? We're not doing this anymore. These are definitely not the real best movies of 2024, okay, you guys? Okay. And I turned out it was actually a pretty damn good year of film, even though I did miss out on a lot that aren't going to be on this list. I'll check those out as soon as I can. And of course, before I do go into it, make sure to check out my letterboxd down below. I've got my list of 2024 movies and my reviews for all of them down there. So let's get right to my favourite movies of 2024, and let's start with those honourable mentions. If, basically a big hug of a movie that felt like a live-action Pixar. It's both extremely sweet, fun, adventurous, and surprisingly heart-wrenching. Late Night with the Devil, which felt like a horror movie you might find hidden away in the video store, but I thought it was great. Trap, an interesting situation thriller in a concert following a serial killer, was definitely a unique perspective, and Shyamalan finds a way to make it feel both cheesy and very terrifying. Paddington in Peru definitely changed at the pace of the previous Paddington films. While not quite as good as those films, I still thought it was very heartfelt and very, very funny. Boy Kills World, some really interesting sci-fi concepts, some really great humour, and just creative action sequences. Beetlejuice, quite a jumbled, messy sequel, but one I'm really glad we got, and I hope we get a third called Beetlejuice. Oh crap. Love Lies Bleeding, a film that starts off as just a basic romance drama, but later becomes such a weird, off-kilter, nerve-shredding crime thriller that just gets more insane and intense as it goes along. Abigail, another film that completely changes what it's about halfway through, but ends up being great and getting the most out of that concept as possible. Lisa Frankenstein, could definitely see this one becoming a cult classic. I loved its morbid humour, its strangely relatable characters, and a really fresh take on a horror comedy. Quiet Place Day One, it's a really sweet film that I thought still had a lot of great tension. The Fall Guy, an extremely entertaining, big meta action comedy with Ryan Gosling just having the most fun possible. Wicked, didn't love the movie as much as everyone else, but I still found the musical sequences very memorable and the film to be fairly epic and exciting. Inside Out 2, an extremely relatable film about anxiety that has grown up with its audience, and this was really close to not making it on the list. Hitman was one of those films that I kept thinking was extremely well written, but then also forgetting that it was based on a true story. Glenn Powell is brilliant in it. Another great film with Glenn Powell in this year, and that is Twisters. I thought this was an improvement upon the first film in every way. Had the big epic set pieces that felt intense and dangerous while still feeling extremely fun. Transformers 1 perfectly meets the notion of more than meets the eye. This movie was funny, emotional, actually had a complex story. This is by far my favorite Transformers movie or media ever. It's What's Inside. Had no clue what this movie was going in. That definitely made its body-switching story so much more fun and erratic to watch. The editing, the performances, the progression of the story were all just absolutely mental. Alien Romulus, scariest alien movie, one of my favourite cinema experiences of the year. Brilliant, the sound design, the cinematography. This was just everything I want in an alien movie. Monkey Man, this could have been a very generic action film, but the action sequences are stellar, and the film has an added emotional pull about Indian society. Editing is so erratic and kinetic in this one. One of the finest action films of the past few years. And my final honorable mention, and no, this is not a joke, is Joker Folie à Deux. I found this film quite mesmerizing and interesting. The only reason this isn't on my list is simply because I did not like the ending. I didn't like the execution of the ending. However, the musical fantasy ideas, the idea of a courtroom drama that examines the Joker character and his actions in the first film, I thought were extremely nuanced and interesting. I'm on the other side of the fence with this one. I thought it was great. And coming in at number 10 is Heretic. And no, not just because of its Jar Jar Binks reference.
Can you imagine thousands of years from now people accepting Jar Jar as a significant religious figure?
Beg your pardon?
Jar Jar. Jar Jar Binks.
Jar Jar, excuse me.
If that scene doesn't make you want to watch the film, I don't know what will. But anyway, this is a challenging horror film that dissects religion from two separate perspectives. The first half is mainly just pure dialogue, and the second half is pure tension. What makes it so thought-provoking is that it's both challenging for those who are religious and those who aren't. Me personally agreeing with the thoughts of the villain of this movie, agreeing with what he's saying, but disagreeing with his methods, because there are good points made on both ends. And the reason it is on this list is because it's one of those films that afterwards it makes you want to discuss it. Could have gone into more depth, but the performances are fantastic. It's able to blend horror and humour and make you think through the thrills and even laugh at times. At number 9 is
Nosferatu.
Now, I'm not a massive fan of the Dracula Nosferatu story. There's been so many iterations I've seen of it in the past, but this is completely a new experience of it, and Eggers completely has his own spin on this story that we've not really seen on screen like this before. This really pays more attention to the dark, gothic, thought-provoking themes of the narrative, but also it's a much more visually impressive, impeccably performed, and creepily unhinged take on this story that I found the cinematography to be phenomenal, the sound design to be phenomenal, so eerie, so quiet, so creepy, and the actual design for Nosferatu himself is just absolutely terrifying. I don't even know where Bill Skarsgård went. Spine-chilling horror film that I think doesn't add too much to the Dracula Nosferatu story, doesn't alter it too much either, but it is a masterwork of a retelling of that story in a completely new, unhinged way. At number 8 is Gladiator 2. Now, Gladiator 1 definitely is a phenomenal film and still one of my favourite big epic historical movies of all time, and a lot of what happens in Gladiator 1 echoes in Gladiator 2, and that definitely led me worrying in that first half that felt like a beat-for-beat remake of the original film. However, I was proven wrong as the film went along, because its final half is what made it on this list. Its final half is absolutely phenomenal. It has a new, deeper, more complex conflict, more epic action set pieces, and whilst it is lacking in that classical filmic style of the original, but I can't deny that Gladiator 2 in some ways did have a stronger story, and I was absolutely riveted by it. You could say I was very entertained, and overall it's just an amazing big epic movie that's worth seeing in the cinema. Number 7 is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
What a wonderful day!
Now, I'm a huge fan of the prequel Planet of the Apes trilogy. Dawn and War are phenomenal, and while Kingdom doesn't beat it, I think this is a proper, perfect evolution of that franchise that sends us into a post-apocalyptic world with the apes and them exploring the history before, maybe how that history has been tainted through time about what happened between the apes and the humans, and it also makes you look at our own history and our own evolution and start questioning things. Visually, this movie is miraculous. This is the most real the apes have ever looked, not just because they're talking full English now, but the actual motion capture work is just absolutely phenomenal. It's a beautiful looking movie, the musical score is fantastic, but it also has a new perspective, a new conflict, a brilliant villain, and I think it sends the Planet of the Apes franchise on a new, stronger path that I'm really looking forward to seeing the continuation of. At number 6 is Furiosa, prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, and Furiosa really is the proper lead up to that story, making Fury Road feel like this film's final act. It's going to make for a very interesting binge watch in the future, but honestly, on its own, this is just a brilliant, roaring, immersive revenge story, and also a brilliant expansion of this apocalyptic world. The film is dark, it's violent, while not quite as gritty and grounded as Fury Road or as action-packed. The action sequences are longer, more exciting, and you care more about what's happening with the characters this time around because you're following that journey for years. This is just an absolute odyssey of an action movie, and I really hope we get more of these. At number 5 is Challengers. This is basically just a love triangle drama with a tennis match used to show the back and forth in their relationship. However, it being told with non-linear flashbacks intercut with the game, adding more weight and tension to that game, leading to a final act of sweating, insanely intense, brilliant tension and character drama that's done visually after everything you've just seen. Just the way this film was made, edited, shot, scored, the musical score is absolutely erratic, and performed makes this movie so much more interesting than it could have been if it was just told in a linear way. At number 4 is the movie I was most looking forward to in 2024, and that is Deadpool and Wolverine.
I am soaking wet right now.
Marvel put in maximum effort to make the Marvel movie of our wettest dreams, and Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds nailed every interaction between these two characters, not just the extremely good buddy cop kind of humour, but also in the emotional scenes as well. But anyway, I'm glad this wasn't a big MCU extravaganza. It's much more about closing out Deadpool's trilogy, closing out the Fox's X-Men franchise and the Fox's Marvel movies. It's much more a tribute to that the pre-MC movies, the ones I grew up with, and that comes into these cameo roles that we get, which actually had decent roles, and using the TVA concept from other Marvel properties for something meta was just a genius idea. And yes, it is a very simple multiversal story we've kind of seen before, but honestly, it worked perfectly for Deadpool because he's able to make fun of it. And I was just smiling and soaking wet till the end. I was mainly soaking wet because I needed to pee the entire time watching the film and I didn't want to go, but it was worth it. At number 3 is The Wild Robot. This is such a sweet, well-natured film about nature versus nurture and parenthood that gets about everything out of its quite simple concept as possible. The animation is absolutely beautiful, but the story even more so, and without any human characters, this animated film is able to capture so much life and emotion, and it's one of those films that kids will be sat there in awe watching it, and, we'll have some funny humour to go alongside it, but the adults will be sat there crying. By far one of the best animated films in recent memory, and it's one that everyone should watch. At number 2 is Civil War. This is a bleak, harrowing, immersive, and thankfully realistic futuristic war film that tells its story from an apolitical point of view through the lens of the journey of war photographers, and also with a preferred lack of explanation that focuses more on the exploration and the experience to the audience. This film doesn't tell you any messages, it just shows you the events and makes you come up with your own mind. Visually, it just looks completely crisp, very clear. It's so grounded in reality, it's so dark, but also has those moments of light that really do help as well. And it includes one of the best action finales I've ever seen. Left me absolutely shaken. Probably has one of the best final songs of all time too. And I was expecting more of a complex plot, more of an explanation of how this world came to be, but really this film doesn't need that. And because of that, I think it makes itself a near masterpiece and definitely an important watch. And coming in at my number 1 is Dune Part 2. This is not only one of the most spectacular sequels of all time, but also one of the best sci-fi movies I think that has ever existed. Continues the story from the first one, but also completely feels its own. The story, the world building, the character work is far much more dense here than the first, but with the epic action, the dramatics, the beautiful musical score, it's just absolutely a breathtaking experience, especially on the big screen. The visuals are somehow taken up a notch, especially with new scenes of colour, scenes of bright orange and black and white, a booming sound design, the rumbling in your seat, but the cinema experience is on another level of immersive. It actually has an interesting story about religion and war, and I like how we actually have a big blockbuster with a chosen one storyline that actually has a considerable amount of depth to it and thought-provoking questions along with it as well, especially with its lead character that Timothée Chalamet is fantastic in. It also has a great romance storyline, and Zendaya is, again, another fantastic performance for this year. And, the climax that it leads to is so action-packed, one of the best big action climaxes I think we've ever had. And it leaves it off in a perfect place to leave this film off, but also makes me completely excited to see what a part 3 could be. Dune Part 2 is honestly a sci-fi masterpiece. It bests the first part in every single way. It's difficult not to be blown away by the sheer immensity of a film like this, and it's at my number 1 simply because no other film is as immersive as Dune Part 2, but no other film perfectly has the mix of complex art house story and filmmaking with big blockbuster scope. It's the perfect blend of two worlds, and it makes for a phenomenal film and one of the best films that you will ever see in the sci-fi genre and of all time. Oh, still recording. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching my favourite movies of 2024. That's the list over. Comment yours down below if you wish. And yeah, goodbye.
Silence!